Okay, so we are live, and as a last-minute decision, we are going to show you a little bit of where we are, because we've been on the road for the last few days in one of the Land Rovers. So you can see the radio on the roof at Network on Wheels HQ, and we have been providing 5G fully solar for what feels like the last few weeks, doesn't it, Carl? But it's how long's it been?
It has been actually only 5 days, but frankly it feels like 5 weeks.
Yes. So there we go. And that's Carl, by the way. He's not in charge of pastries. But he's sat next to me, so it would be a bit silly.
But I do make an exceedingly good one. We've had some very long days in terms of the weeks. The last week we were up at the RHS Spring Festival at the Three Counties Showground in Malvern, testing out private 5G networks and connecting up payment terminals and other devices for a limited number of customers on our first ever live trial. And really worryingly, and I say this as a commercial guy, really worryingly, it worked first time, which therefore I didn't know what to look for. But Christian's a technical expert. We got great reviews. The weather was superb by the end of with the thunderstorms, if you don't know. So what a great weekend to be out and about all day. Early starts, site lockdown from 7:30, and site then reopened from sort of 6:30 onwards. So very, very long days. Lots of good learnings in terms of the mass and the kit and whatever else we were using, the radios. We will get a bit more operationally slicker in terms of setting and then de-rigging. But that's what this is all about. It's as much as the fact that we were running radio, private 5G, where Wi-Fi solutions could not, were basically not available and couldn't hack it, and therefore success. So I'm really pleased about that. And I know
We've got a mix, haven't we? They were available there, but they fell over in certain places.
Well, they fell over, but there were not spots.
Yes, there were not spots. That's the one.
So yeah, it's been very, very good on that basis. But I guess moving on and getting into the day, unless you've got anything else. Just to finish off on that, we've got various trials over the summer, and as everything with these things, baby steps to start with. E-cargo bikes will be at the next one, so we'll have some pretty interesting video on that. I think in terms of the landies, we deployed 2 this time. We'll expand, I guess, the footprint, and therefore, and by that I mean the traffic that flows over it, with an ultimate goal of for high volume, high density end users, whatever you want to determine an end user to be. And like I said, e-cargo bikes we'll put into the next one, and then we'll start to get a bit funky with the geography and the challenges that we get there. So
by deploying the AI.
And deploying the AI, if you want to give a bit more info.
Talking of which, well, there'll be some clever AI mapping how people move around festivals, counting people and cows and things, because some of the festivals are animal-based festivals like Tenbury and Hanbury, and the next show up in the Royal Counties will have livestock. But today we are now in Bath, opposite Network on Wheels HQ, one word HQ. And today we were actually doing the some AI. We had somebody doing AI across the we are tethering to the mobile phone, so I didn't know whether the mobile phone would knock our signal down. But yes, so we had somebody demonstrating AI in Bath. I don't think it's really a not spot. I don't know necessarily.
Well, they were struggling to get the low latency that they needed indoors, and at a last-minute decision, they bailed out into the good old British weather, which fortunately was sunny.
Yes.
we had a landy parked in a parking bay in a square in Bath, set up a table, and the demo went ahead over our private network. So another good use case for that. And the other thing I think I neglected to mention on the last trial as well was around the tracking applications. So we had various devices that we were loaning to traders to get them up and running that were pre-configured to get the payment terminals working, for want of a better phrase, and things like routers and end-user devices that create hotspots. We track them. So I guess fortunately nobody tried to run off with any. Not that they would. They're all there to make money and are decent human beings. But unfortunately, none of them tried to run off with any, because therefore we couldn't track it. But we could see in real time in the movement across the trial area. So that was excellent as well.
Yeah.
So moving on to some of the topics of the day, there's a couple I think we'd like to go through, building on that. And I think the first one has been a running theme over the past few weeks. Bit of news on the Vodafone 3 merger. It has this week been announced that it is cleared from a security point of view, which protects strategic investments or sensitive investments for the UK government and therefore the UK economy. And the issue around that was, well, 3 is owned by a Chinese business or a significant stakeholder of a Chinese business. So the caveats put on that were, if you don't know, to recap on a bullet point basis, were in terms of the network and radio planning, the government said that they wanted that to be audited by a government approved auditor before they make decisions to move ahead with that. There are 1 or 2 security implications in the fine print, which frankly I'm not going to get into here. It's getting a bit too far into the weeds. And it's still got to get approval from the Competitions and Markets Authority. So the reduced competition, where Vodafone will, the merging, or the vehicle that results in the merger, with Vodafone having 51%, will have 27 million customers, and they will have 40-something%, 47 from memory, % market share, which seems a bit dominant from where I'm sat. But of course, the statements they're releasing is it won't stifle innovation and prices won't go up. Yeah, right. So we'll see what happens on that. So there's still a way to go, but the security hurdle, which could have been a big one with the ownership, etc., which prompts me to I guess follow on with something else which triggered me on and it's just an aside on the Chinese ownership thing. There's a report come out this week with quote unquote, I mean, headlines from journalists, shock horror, have come out with the fact that there's a new Cold War. And the start point for this is, the internet traffic goes around the world. 99% of the traffic goes through submarine cables. And in the last 2 years, or probably more than that, the number of landing points in China has reduced dramatically. This affects Chinese data centers, and it affects I guess the Chinese ability to intercept stuff on their own soil, and that's not just Chinese issue. That applies to any other government as well. And to give a demonstration of the scale of this, the number of submarine cables with new landing points in Singapore is now, for this year, is forecast to be double, and that's forecast equals what's been signed and being built in Singapore than it is in China. And a lot of these cables are bypassing China, etc., etc. And in the wake of the announcements this week on electric vehicles and the 100% tax, and I know that's a small amount of the global market, 2%. It just seems that there are infrastructure lines being drawn. So the UK is obviously not caught up with the party, or assumes that's okay for the Vodafone 3 merger. Which I find quite interesting.
Yes. Well, we shall see what goes on there. But well, there is also a privacy first mobile carrier. It was raised 61 million, called Cape, which I think is quite funny. Cape, as in superhero Cape.
Indeed.
And it says we'll use the money to build a nationwide network that provides premium wireless coverage, which, unlike traditional carriers, masks personal identifying information like names, numbers, and locations. Well, I think we do that in pretty much any network.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Good luck, as anyone who's tried to set up an MVNO. Good luck getting the location information of your provider, because there's literally 3 people in the MNO who have access to that, and unless there's newspapers, and we'll leave that alone.
Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, don't start Mr. Four Weddings and a Funeral on that one. But yeah, combining 12 separate national blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't see this as being anything. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to have a little dig more into this.
I think there's been another interesting ruling this week, and it's a follow-up ruling by the FCC in the States, and it's a follow-up to a previous ruling, and affects clearly us and is relevant from the private 5G with network slicing. And I think this is all surrounding net neutrality. To give a quick overview for those that don't know, net neutrality was signed in by the Obama administration, and is enshrined in most European countries as in law. Trump obviously repealed that. Biden's come back and they've reintroduced it. Anyway, the rulings about, I can't remember when it was, but it's a little while ago. The rulings that the FCC made and the guidance that they gave was such that there were various law professors from the top echelons of US law who were saying you can't quite drive ancient horses through it, but that you can drive data on a quicker, or you can differentiate by the speed of data that you offer the mass market, which obviously with net neutrality leads to its own problems. You could get the Googles and Facebook and all the rest of it basically offering their customers faster data because they paid for it and they can afford to, than a startup, and it kills innovation, etc., etc. So that's the background, but the actual implication was the FCC then looked at this and then has reissued a statement this week, and the statement goes along the lines of you cannot differentiate in terms of speed for any reason whatsoever, and by extension for 5G standalone networks where you are into network slicing. So if you have a use case for a business that pays for network slicing, they cannot disadvantage the mass market. So an ISP cannot, that's a startup that sells to a startup, cannot differentiate it to a business that is sliced, for want of a better phrase, on their network. Well, that seems great on the outside. I mean, these companies should be differentiated in speed, but speed is equal, as is money. Cost is a very quick way to differentiate. I mean, there are basically only 2 strategies in the world: price or differentiation. So they've got to focus on the differentiation. This will protect the consumer. It will protect it'll protect innovation. It'll protect startups and give a level playing field. So hopefully Trump, if he gets in, does not repeal that. But I'm not holding my breath. So that affects what we're doing, and affects anybody that's in 5G, particularly private 5G, and how they can operate.
Good. How are you, Andy?
Fine. How are you?
I'm very good. I don't know. This is the first time we've done everything joint. I don't know if Frankie's trying to get in or whatever, but yeah, we are over our Starlink.
Well, I was on the website waiting to get in, and then you sent me this other link. So it matters not. We're all here.
Good. Yeah. So yeah, it's been quite eventful, but I'm amazed at it's absolutely astonishing how in an event we were providing the connectivity over the Starlink.
Yeah.
And it's, as you can see now, it's just as reliable as any other connection.
Stable.
I mean, obviously, we did have a thunderstorm that potentially knocked out a little bit of the connectivity, but it seemed to stay pretty stable. I mean, it's pretty amazing, no?
Yeah, it's come across this way. We've just had it. It's just left here. So it's come west to east.
So yeah, it's if anyone wants to, well, I just showed before you guys were on. We just did a little walk around, but we are transmitting live from a Starlink that is 100% solar powered, and a 5G radio on the roof, which is 100% solar powered, and even the pack to this is 100% solar powered. So we are 100% renewable, and yeah, I mean it's. So on that note, we have been on the road now for, I don't know, best part of a week, including the weekends. But I think we may end this one a little bit early, unless, Andy, you have any particular news that you wanted to add to the list?
No, nothing from me. It's just how you got on at the at the show.
So we covered it briefly, but I think
Yes.
the short of it is, I think one thing that we haven't said is that when we arrived, obviously, there's a lot of confusion about what you do, and I don't think people really need to know. But at the end of the day, I think it was very surprising for a lot of people that we had a Wi-Fi antenna that must have been 10 meters up. Our antenna was only 2.5 meters up, and we could reach far over marquees, people, etc., than the Wi-Fi can. And then put a little CPE, which is a Wi-Fi, and the customers were getting all the connectivity that they need. And it just goes to show that obviously they are very different technologies. Wi-Fi is fantastic for what it is, in that it gives you short-range, cheap connectivity. But
unsecure.
Yeah, I mean, the security, Wi-Fi 7 is coming, is a bit more secure, etc. But ultimately, yes, 5G, especially private 5G, is infinitely more secure. And yeah, but it's
nature.
Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic, and we had, yeah, I mean, there are moments when you kind of realize that they're different horses for different courses, but having both, I think, is the way forward.
It is. There's no magic bullet, and I guess a suite of solutions will always be the way. And I guess, but from our point of view, to do the the remote 5G where there is no connectivity other than, I mean, the Wi-Fi on that site was backhauled by fiber, and to get it up and running and working first time, as I said earlier. We're pretty much on track to what we want to do, and extremely bullish about it. So looking forward to the progression over the summer, and in terms of proving the point in the field rather than on paper or in a lab is great. Actually, it's great.
Yeah. Did any customers actually latch onto the network? Did you generate any traffic for them, or did you just?
Yeah. We've got a lot of video which we'll release at some point of the interviews, the traders that we enabled. There's a few come to mind, but one guy particularly, he was doing high value items, very well engineered products, and he couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi for whatever reason. And then somebody set him up on a hotspot on his own phone just to get him over to get some sales, because he'd lost about £1,000 worth of business by the time, and this is on the first day, by the time I got to see him. We put a router in for him on the second day, and whilst I was stood there, he did 1,500 quid's worth of sales, which put a smile back on his face, you can well imagine. It was chalk and cheese. So we've got video testimonials of a lot of people like that, and we ran surveys of some people that were on the well, everybody that was on the network, but equally people that weren't, and what they were doing, because they haven't got time, traders, to mess around and try and find a connectivity solution. It's a utility. It's a utility. It has to work. And if you go through a QR code and it works, they're happy. Even if you have to type in an SSID and a key password, then they're happy. But people were sending salespeople off-site for 2 hours to go to the local shop, get a dongle and try and do it that way. They're trying to hotspot, but they got the power that was draining the phones. There were many things they were trying to do, but there was nothing coherent. So we were very well received.
So we got a message asking how's the solar. At the moment, there's only 28 watts because we're shadowed by a building. The whole system uses actually less than 100 watts at the moment because it's all been massively optimized. But today in Bath, sort of partially shaded by trees, and so there's 300 watts of panels on the roof, and we're running at almost 300 watts at one point, 280, 290, which is topping up the batteries nicely. But this is just one single 2.5 kilowatt hour battery, is the same one that ran the entire festival. In terms of stats, we did about 60 gig.
Yeah, I think over the 4 days we did. Yeah.
Over the 4 days, and the last day, one alone did something like 26 gig. So it's a fair amount of traffic, but bear in mind it's supporting traders and key staff. It's not open to the public.
Yeah.
Because like any network, I mean, the reason that the local network is saturated is because it's open to the public.
Yeah.
And falls over. But yeah, and everything.
Shock horror.
Yeah.
Shock horror. Yeah. Don't invite so many public. Yeah, I know.
Well, you got 100,000 people on site on a day when the day before there wasn't any. Well, guess what happens next?
And so lots of data. We'll be publishing some of the stats.
Yeah.
The Starlink is, I mean, it's just incredible, isn't it? I mean, there's no two words about it. We're running it through power over Ethernet, so it's only pulling about 20-30 watts most of the time, even though it's the high performance flat Starlink. And we're even running all of the support team. We were running off of solar, so we were basically off of the systems that we've got here. We were charging all of the phones, all of the. So the only thing that wasn't was the little tower routers, but we'll change that because they plug in wherever you go. But all of the phones, all of our laptops, everything over solar. We were self-sufficient and sustainable for a period of time. And Carl's hat, which is another comment, is seems to be a festival thing.
I don't say anything.
But there was another one had to be bought because I don't know, someone sat on that one or something.
I keep my sandwiches under it, Andy.
Yeah,
they're
jam sandwiches.
Yeah.
But anywho, so yeah, it's good. I think we've hyped this to death, but it worked first time. And as a non-tech guy, the relief, one, the relief, and two, the shock was. I shouldn't say that too loudly, but with
well, it's not shock, but I mean there is. So yeah, driving. I suppose we should share. Driving up the M4, I was warned. So there's all sorts of things that you try to do when you try and compress a timeline. But essentially, the production Land Rovers have the panels that way. We were wanting to test the setup on the e-cargo bikes, which never go over 60 miles an hour anyway. So I did the setup. I was warned by my father that if you put them sideways, it may create lift. And long story short, leaving London at sometime late in the evening, on a road we will not describe, one of the solar panels did take lift, and it's the good news is that it was on the front Land Rover, and so it was recycled under the wheel of the rear Land Rover. But that was half an hour where we had to take everything off, just in case. But yeah, I mean, there's things to be learnt. But ultimately, I think it's not just luck that it came right. I mean, there's a huge amount of work got into it, and we kept it simple. And this is one of the key things that everyone forgets. You've got to find a differentiator, stick to that, and keep it simple. And so, yes, it would have been easier to go with more panels. Yes, we even simplified You know, we were going to play with this CPE, that CPE, these, and you know, we had these fantastic high quality CPEs that go on the edge of the hangars that are in the, and then you run a cable and put the other one in. Yes, that would have been fantastic, and it would have helped us on the peak of Saturday and Sunday when the routers. But again, we just went and put the tower CPEs. We tied them up with a cable tie, and to be honest, the customers kind of liked that better because they could see the lights of the tower and see what it's doing. And so yes, there's also a comment to first responders. So we will be at I think we can say it's Glastonbury. In this one, they had a private network, but in events like Glastonbury, we will be helping the first responders. And apparently, you're like Winnie the Pooh.
That's why I go for jam, not marmalade sandwiches.
Right.
Well, exactly. You have to be marmalade. Yeah, exactly, Carl. That's.
Well, no, I like to differentiate.
And the range,
myself.
the range was incredible. So we did some tests today in Bath, which is a very difficult city to cover. Yeah, someone was calling me.
There you go.
So yeah, ideally I wouldn't be tethering from my phone, but this iPad is not 5G, so we'll have to solve that and get a 5G one, and so people don't call me and knock it out. You can't hype an EV Defender. It's the bee's knees. Yes, they are absolutely. You know, the Land Rover is just so. One thing that he's don't get him started on Land Rovers. We've only got 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
But what is quite amazing, I think, is we are using a Land Rover, and a lot of the other things. So a lot of people commenting things like, when you use a van, you look like some sneaky FBI spook. When they use like a Hilux, you look like you know, all the jokes.
Terrorist. Yeah.
Kind of terrorist. And I think, you know, everybody loved the Land Rover. We had probably as many comments about the Land Rovers from people as we did, and it's you know, because it's such an icon, particularly at events like the Royal Horticultural Society events, everybody loved it. But also, I mean, people forget it's just so workable. So the roof is so usable, the inside is so usable. You wouldn't believe the amount of junk we could carry. You know, even when it was raining, we've got some wonderful videos of people sat on the front, standing on the back. Yeah, it's an icon, and our e-cargo bikes will surprise a lot of people, I think, as well, because they are amazing. I can't wait to finish them. And I think on that note, we are heading into almost full time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to actually get home and not be doing 4 hours sleep.
Yes.
16 hours on top of Landies. I'm looking forward to getting the feeling back in the end of my fingers from MC4 connectors, growing back the cuticles from shoving cables here, shoving cables there. It was quite intense. But yeah,
it was, and I think from my side, I think hopefully, you know, I make no apologies for coming across so enthusiastically, because it was brilliant. There's no other way to say it. It was
perfect. No, perfect.
And it's the first day, obviously, going from a lab to a real environment. Well, we've had it out in the wilds before, but a real environment where you're connecting customers and stuff, and it's actually for real, because they'll lose money if you don't get it right.
And such a high-profile show. There were 400 traders.
And so, first stage done. We'll now deepen that the trials and what we're going to do, and the volumes and the cargo bike. All of that's yet to come, and we will share the video. So keep eyes out for.
Before you go, if you can hear me, I have had a question about if we use it in different.
I think one of the other things to say is, go on.
No, I was going to say, I was asked about licenses. If you go to a different country, what kind of license do you need?
So each country has different licensing for this, but in the UK, you go to Ofcom, and there are both test licenses that you can get for a day. Different countries use different frequencies, obviously, and but you can have a permanent license, of course. But for this kind of event, you just use a test license, which is pretty easy. The government is very Ofcom are very receptive for this at the moment. But what I was just saying quickly is that it is no mean feat. That obviously the reason we managed to get this done is that we've been doing MVNOs for 20 years. Everyone we've done is still in service because we know how to basically get services into market and look at what is important, what is a differentiator, minimize the scope, minimize the risk, and get stuff done without getting distracted, overloading yourself, trying to do too much too soon. And that is basically, ironically, as I was getting this vehicle, I was getting service just before we came here, and there was Ramsey's Kitchen Nightmares were on, and it's exactly that. It's you just see so many people trying to do too much too soon, or not shaking up things that don't work. And we've looked at this from the core, and so it's very exciting. Let's wrap it up there, and before another person calls me and knocks out the video, and we'll do it properly over. I'll do the do not disturb, whatever. Apologies, Frankie. I think I sent a second link rather than using the other link, but
I was sat on the first one, I think, waiting for you. Anyway, never mind. We're here. We're all here now. That's
yes, and but we're going to be doing more of these around the country, I reckon.
Yeah, a lot more, and then we'll do some outside stuff if the weather holds. When we built from.
And obviously, in something like the RHS, nobody's going to do anything. But in a music festival, who knows? Maybe people crawling across the window and stuff like that.
Reason. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, thank you, everybody, as ever.
Have a good one.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.